Good evening. I am Reverend Amy Moses Lagos, and it is my privilege to serve as the minister at Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church. I use the pronouns she and her. I send my wishes to all of you for happy holidays and a very Merry Christmas. It is my joy and privilege to welcome you to this Christmas Eve service. Whether you've spent every Christmas Eve for many years at BBUUC, or we are welcoming you as our guest for the first time this evening. Our opening words this evening are written by Reverend Gretchen Haley. Calling all who cannot wait any longer for joy, for hope, and some good news, even a little. The time has come, the waiting is over. Here in this time, we have an old story to tell, one that has been shared over and over for thousands of years. But still somehow it remains unheard, still radical and risky, breaking through into these days of darkness and cold, division and fear, interrupting the perpetual stories of violence and loss and the feelings of powerlessness. Into the errands and errors of our everyday, Christmas arrives, not only to comfort, but to awaken, to reassure, and also to stir us up as a new life, a life of peace and justice and courageous love struggles to be born. Wondering if we will yet be the ones who make room in our lives and in our world for the refugee, the poor, the plain and messy sweetness of a newborn baby. If we will take the journey to Bethlehem. If we will be changed by the presence of a love that meets us where we are in the fields, wherever we lay, and calls us forth into a new journey, a braver and bolder life, believing that it is not too late for strong and gentle people to win, for compassion and truth to have the final say, for the bright light of hope to shine through, even on the darkest night. Come, let us celebrate the good news of Christmas, and let us worship together.
Cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and a Christmas Eve, cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and a Christmas Eve, cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and heard a bird sing. Cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and heard a bird sing. Cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and a Christmas Eve, cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and a Christmas Eve, cuckoo, as I be walking on a Christmas Eve, and a Christmas Eve, I heard a bird sing. I heard a bird sing.
My name is Linda Mowers, and I welcome you to Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church on this beautiful Christmas Eve. Last year, we had our very first virtual Christmas Eve service, and I was so grateful that we could gather, albeit virtually, during such a difficult time. We're not over the pandemic yet, and we're still implementing safe practices with mask wearing and no congregational singing in the sanctuary. We're also unable to celebrate the holiday with our traditional Christmas Eve reception and fellowship over shared treats and beverages. But we are together again, and it feels really good. This might be your first Christmas Eve here at Buckman Bridge or an annual tradition for you. Some of you are back after a long absence, and some are visiting us for the first time tonight. We welcome all of you. For a few of us, like myself, this is our 31st Christmas Eve service, and I'm grateful to you all for sharing yourselves in community on this special night. We appreciate those of you who were able to bring a donation of diapers tonight for the Diaper Bank of Northeast Florida, as we lift up the holiness of every night that a child is born and help those in need who in need have an adequate supply of diapers to keep their babies clean, dry, and healthy. At the end of our service, we will guide you all in a recessional out the door to the front of the church, where we will sing together Silent Night by candlelight and close our service outdoors. This evening's worship service will offer Christmas liturgy and candle lighting by your worship team and music from our beloved and talented Smart family, Gary, Marilyn, Molly, and Kate. As difficult as it may sometimes be, I would like to ask you, the congregation, in reverence of the evening, to refrain from applause so that we may all celebrate each gift of our participants in our hearts. We can all show our appreciation and greet one another at the close of the service this evening. And now I would like to invite David Dean to come forward and light our chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, with the words of Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Dan Lambert. We gather together on this Christmas Eve as fellow sojourners looking for light, for hope, for peace, and for love. We gather as people from many backgrounds, many faiths, many cultures, and many spiritual paths. But as we light this chalice, we gather as one body looking to the Nativity for its message to all of humanity. Its message is that there is light, there is hope, there is peace, and there is love. So for each of the last 4 Sundays, we have lit candles on the Advent wreath. Each light was a step into the darkness toward the turning of the year, leaning in expectation into all that is being born in us at this holy time of the year, when the unknown lies before us, rich with possibility. Tonight, we light the Advent candles for the last time this year. First, we light the candle of hope for that which is best in us to rise and enliven our souls and our relationships. The second candle we light for peace, for the courage to soften what is rigid in our hearts, to find the soft spot and stay with it. We light the third candle in the name of joy. Joy in the shape of gratitude for all that is our life, and joy in expectation for the world that we are building and creating with one another. The last candle is lit in the name of love as the creating force in our lives. And finally, we light the central candle, the light that shines in the darkness with the full power of our faith. We know, says Reverend Bill Sinkford, how real the brokenness of the world is, but we will not give brokenness the last word. May this light bear our hopes as well as our faith in love, in goodness, in compassion, in justice. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness shall not overpower it.
Joy to the word is come. Let earth with praises ring. Let every heart prepare a room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, now gladness reigns. Let hearts shines. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat, repeat the sounding joy.
Since the dawn of time, people have celebrated the longest night of the year with light and fire and thanksgiving, for they have learned that the darkest and longest night marks the turn of the year, the time when the sun, giver of warmth and light, turns back from death and grows strong again. The turning of the year is a promise of renewing life. The sun will climb the heavens again, and the darkness will be pushed back each day. People will walk upon the greening earth. The green shoots will burst from the seed, and the young will be brought forth from the womb. In the midst of winter, the promise is given of the summer season. In the midst of darkness comes the assurance of the light. In this time, when days grow short, the time of the long night, and the darkness and the cold, light in our hearts, the light in our hearts lights the light of faith. We have faced each one our own times of darkness. We have been discouraged and lonely, and we have been afraid. Yet we trust that we too will find light for our darkness and turn again to life with courage and faith.
In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find the baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly a great company of the heavenly host appeared, with an angel praising God, saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." No one knows at what time of the year Jesus was born, but when long after his death stories of his birth were collected and written down, the growing Christian church wanted to celebrate his birthday. The church fathers wisely decreed that it should be at the time of the most beloved and universal festival in the experience of people all the world over, the midwinter celebrations, the festivals of light. So to the old festivals were added all the new celebrations which centered around the Christmas story of the child born in the manger, whom the wisest men visited, and about whom all the host of heaven sang. Stories gathered from many times and many places, and told and retold in story and song and in poetry, each adding its magic to the meaning of Christmas. Each year this time, we turn again to hope in a time of darkness, to the old hope of people in a world of terror and tumult for peace on earth. In some far day, to people of goodwill, and to the importance and promise of every child who is born into the world. Christmas has come once more to the earth. Light in our hearts, the light of hope. Let us remember that the great and holy may sometimes be found in unlikely and unaccustomed places, that from the most humble beginning children come who carry within them the seeds of greatness and a great light. May we remember that in each one of us burns an unquenchable and eternal light within which every person who comes into the world.
There are two things that I would like to tell you about this Italian carol that I'm about to sing. The first one is, in the Italian legend, it says, "You came from the stars, O King of Heaven, you came to a cave that was very cold. Oh, my divine child, I saw you in there trembling and cold. And I think I love you so much because of the sacrifice you have given to us." The second thing I wanted to tell you is in Rome, in St. Paul's Cathedral, this carol accompanies the Pope going in towards the altar and giving his Christmas homily. Tu scendi dalle stelle, o Re del cielo, tu vieni in una grotta al freddo gelo, tu vieni in una grotta al gelo e freddo. Oh, bambino,
Christmas is a festival of giving and sharing. It is a time of secrets and surprises, of gifts chosen with loving care and shared with joy. The child in Bethlehem was himself a gift to his parents and to the world, which is a better place because he has lived. The gifts of Christmas are the gifts of life itself and love, which makes life possible. They are the gifts of song, of grace, of beauty, the gifts of sharing the best we have to give with those we love. At this time of the giving of gifts lovingly made and carefully chosen, at this time of the sharing with one another that which is deepest and dearest to us, light in our hearts, the light of our love. Heal in our hearts the wounds of misunderstanding, mistakes, and regrets. Help us to reach out with joy and grace for the gifts which life and love offer us, and sustain our hopes and labors together for that time when all people shall come into the circle of peace and world fellowship. May we share this Christmas the best of who we are with those we love. Together, may our hearts share peace.
The sun is shining, the grass is green, the orange and palm trees sway. There's never been such a day in Beverly Hills, LA. But it's December the 24th, and I'm longing to be up north. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
Christmas is a festival of joy. It is a time of feasting and fun, of singing and visit, of friends and family reunited, of glittering trees and lighted houses, of stockings and presents, of fires and candles, of stories of a tiny child in a manger. All the bright heritage which has come down to us as members of a large human family. The joy of Christmas belongs to those who have vision enough to seek a guiding star in the dark mystery which girdles the earth. The joy of Christmas belongs to those who, in the midst of the darkness, have lighted candles in the night. In this happy season, light in our hearts the light of joy. To miss the joy of Christmas is to miss its holiest secret. Let each of us build into our Christmas all that is bright and warm and joyful, the holiest and most precious of human qualities. Let there come into our hearts the wisdom to be for a little time as a little child, to warm ourselves by the fire of imagination, to learn the abiding wisdom in poetry and legend and in song, Let this be the season where wisdom enough and time are ours for the seeking and the asking, and where joy may abound.
You never know how things will turn out. Sometimes big events have very small beginnings. A little acorn can turn into a giant oak tree, for example, but you'd never guess from looking at the acorn that it had all that potential hidden inside. Long ago, Jesus talked with people about that very idea. The people he associated with were folks like himself, farmers and fishermen and laborers who worked for a living. So he usually spoke in terms that would have been familiar to them. For instance, he talked about faith being like a mustard seed, which he said is the smallest of seeds. Well, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and a mustard seed is not the smallest. An orchid has a small seed. It's such a small seed that it's practically like a grain of dust. But the mustard is still pretty small. And Jesus might have chosen to talk about it because mustard is one of those plants that's practically like a weed. One plant can produce hundreds of seeds. And once it gets a toehold in a field or a garden, it starts to spread and spread, so that several states like Oregon, Virginia, and North Carolina actually classify it as an invasive species, which means a species that tends to take over and go everywhere. Looks small, but looks are deceiving. And if you had faith like a mustard seed, Jesus said, you could move mountains. That's the way he talked, very poetically, helping people picture things in their mind. But what he meant was, if one person, just one person, had the courage to do what's right, it could sometimes change everything, even make a revolution. Like Rosa Parks. What did she do? Saying to the bus driver, "No, I won't go in the back." Doesn't sound like much, but it took a lot of guts at the time. Rosa had faith like a mustard seed, and she moved mountains. Jesus also talked about the kingdom of God, which he compared to yeast in a loaf of bread. And a grain of yeast really is little, probably even smaller than an orchid seed. Typical grain is 3 to 4 micrometers in diameter, and a micrometer is 1,000th of a millimeter. So small you can't even see it. Now, even though the people Jesus talked with were farmers and folks who worked with their hands, they would have been familiar with kings, because there were plenty of them around in those days. Emperors and pharaohs and Caesars and whatnot, and they loved to be seen. They'd stamp their own portraits on the money. They'd erect giant statues of themselves in the town square. They'd dedicate temples and festivals to themselves. They did everything they could to advertise their own power, and they wanted to let people know about what great armies they commanded. But Jesus said, the real force that commands the world can't be seen. It's behind the scenes, like yeast. You stir a little yeast into some warm water and you mix that up with your flour, and then, with a little patience, the bread starts to rise. It starts to expand in a way that's almost unstoppable. And the people listening thought to themselves, well, we're not kings. We don't have armies. But maybe we do have some power after all. It's like a baby. At least that's the story that Christmas tells. Nothing more tiny, nothing more helpless. But one child, even a child born in a barn to a homeless family without much money, can change the world for the better and alter the course of history. There's power in all of us. We have more leverage than we can imagine, and even the smallest of us can make a big difference in other people's lives. That's what Jesus taught.
At this time, we draw our service to a close with a litany of light. In a moment, we'll invite you all to recess to the front of the building, which is behind you, not in front of you. As you leave the building, please take a candle from the ushers at the door and find a place with your family or your pod of friends in front of the porch area, that way. Practice safe distancing as you feel comfortable, and you may remove your masks as you feel comfortable as well. We will be led in the closing hymn, Silent Night, a cappella by the Smart family, which will then be followed by our benediction. The words from our UU hymnal are in your order of service, so take those with you. But if those words don't match the words in your heart, feel free to go with your heart. During the recessional, please do so silently as we extinguish the chalice and the candles from our service inside. Please light your candles outside, and when we are all together outside, we will begin. Please don't forget to gather up your bags or jackets as we will immediately depart the service from the benediction and the parking lot. Recess.